Before calculus breaks your brain with limits and derivatives, it quietly checks one thing first. Do you actually understand functions? Most people don't fail calculus because calculus is hard. They fail because their pre-calc foundation is shaky. And today we're fixing that. So first of all, we want to go over what's a function. A function is something that has a corresponding value. So for example, there's a function that gets anyone's height, fx. So let's say f of Shaq is equal to 7'1" or 216 centimeters. Just in case you don't know, Shaq is one of the best shooters in the NBA back in the days. So jokes aside, let's take a look. So in a function, we actually have something called a domain and a range. The domain is the x value. It's the every x value you're allowed to be plugging in. And then in this situation, we can say, oh, x such that x is not equal to 6, 7. It can be anything except for the 6, 7 joke. Damn, okay. How about the range? The range is the value that you output. And the range is basically, by definition, every output a function can produce. So this is y such that y is greater than 0, so the height must be positive. Just to note that this little dash just recommends such that, so be aware of that. So similarly, we can say for Rick Astley, it's probably a height, but like just for the jokes, we're gonna say never gonna give you up. Congratulations, you just got rickrolled. Some key takeaways. Two men can have the same height, so there's probably someone who's also 7'1". But no man can have two heights. So Shaq can only be 7'1". He cannot be 7'1" and 6'7" at the same time. In math, it's kind of similar. Two x values can have the same y value, but no x value can have two corresponding y values. So for example, fx is equal to x squared. Let's see two x values having the same y value, which is f of -1, which is -1 squared, which is 1. F1 is also 1 squared, which is 1. But no x value can have two corresponding values because 1 squared is just 1. You cannot have anything else. Yes, that's a pretty big takeaway. And in calculus, despite it looks easy, calculus basically rickrolls everyone who forgets about domain and range. So always keep in mind of that. Next we have graphs. Graphs are basically the picture of the functions. In this situation, I really want to talk about graphs because in calculus, we're basically, for derivatives, we're solving for the slope. And then for the integrals, we're basically solving the area under this. So it's very important to understand what the graph looks like. So for example, we have the linear graph, we also have quadratics, we also have cubic functions, just keep in mind of that. They're logarithmic functions. There is trigonometry functions, this is like sine function. And then we probably have some weird functions like this. And we also have something called piecewise functions. So piecewise functions are basically just little graphs combined together to form this sort of graph. And in order to identify if the graph is a function or not, we actually have something called the vertical line test. Since for every x there's only one y, so we want to make sure there's only one dot. And then in this situation, we can see this one. It is a graph indeed, because for every x there's an individual y. For this one, that looks like Eugene, the meme character. There are two dots connected to a line, which means that there's the same x but with two y's, so it's actually not a function. Lastly, we're going to talk about inverse functions. So the functions that give back x if given y. So back to our Shaq example, if we input Shaq, it gives us the height. But how about if we input his height first? Let's say f of 7'1", negative, which is Shaq. Yeah, that's how the function works. So in order to write inverse functions, we write f of -1 to the x. The definition of this, but like a little fun fact, is that if fx is a function, it doesn't mean that its inverse has to be a function as well. So for this one, I mean, like Shaq is 7'1", but there are also many 7'1" guys other than Shaq. And then in order to see if it's a function, we actually have to do something called a horizontal line test. That's something similar to the vertical line test, except you want to find if the inverse is it. Yeah, so that's a very useful thing to know. And then, yeah, that's basically some function basics. You really want to review those before you actually start studying calculus. And here's a little checklist. You want to make sure you know these functions: linear, quadratic, rational, exponential, logarithmic, and trigonometry. And a quote for you guys: the more you know, the more you know. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.